Today, we have our Sarnia Realtor Investor Specialist, Sarah. She will sell it. Arseneault.
Winter market is in full swing. Things are a little slower given the interest rate hikes, but it's a great time for investors down here for a magnitude of reasons. Median price for the year, this is where we're kind of most impacted in Sarnia, is about $490. It's 12% up though over last year's median in Sarnia. Now, months of inventory, this is where I'm saying we still obviously have lots of inventory. And in terms of even the multifamilies that I work with a lot with my investors, we've seen more of that than we have in a long time. Look, the other day we might have had 8 or 9 just sitting on there, active, not even conditionally sold, that you could look at.
What I just heard was some money advice.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. My name is Zack Brittain with Phipps Brittain Real Estate, and today we have our Sarnia Realtor Investor Specialist, Sarah. She will sell it. Arseneault, what is going on down in Sarnia today?
Hey, so like everywhere, winter market is in full swing. Things are a little slower given the interest rate hikes, which just happened again there a few days ago.
Yep.
But it's a great time for investors down here for a magnitude of reasons. Things are sitting and people want to make deals.
Awesome. I like people that want to make deals. Let's get into the presentation. But before we do that, for any of our new viewers out there, Sarah, why don't you give us the Coles notes on you, your real estate business, your investing experience? What areas do you operate out of? Is it just Sarnia? What types of deals are you seeing? What types of clients are you working with these days?
Yeah, so I got into real estate about 4 years ago. I had previous experience in terms of myself as an investor buying. At that time, if you're new to the channel, it was literally a crack house that my husband and I bought and cleaned up. So I have done the good, bad, and ugly in terms of real estate investing as well.
So you did a first investment property before you even decided to get into real estate as your career?
Correct. Yeah.
And you bit off the dirty, bite first.
Yeah. So started with a crack house. Yeah. Things went up from there. So that was kind of my first in terms of personal investment.
Very cool.
Morphed into real estate. I was super passionate about it and started working, at that point, with friends and family, buying and selling, and then kind of grew into this area where people were asking me, about investments and what I did. So at that point, fast forward to COVID and everything, I started getting a lot of contacts from out of town, that wanted to invest in Sarnia due to rising rates everywhere else, which kind of landed me in this area of basically on a day-to-day basis. I talk with a lot of investors who want to invest in Sarnia and don't really know about Sarnia. So that's kind of how I found my niche, was explaining to people why Sarnia is so great, and also finding those people that want to really know about an area before they're just looking at the price tag, which I think is super important, because now, I have my own investors that maybe never bought with me, but always, ask my opinion, and now their investments aren't looking so good that they bought privately because they didn't have that, oh, what about this area? What about that area advice?
Yes, unfortunately, in the real estate business, good advice can be hard to come by, but when you got it, don't let it go. So if you guys are looking to connect with Sarah for questions regarding investing in real estate, Sarnia real estate market in the surrounding areas. We are going to have all of her contact information below. She also has a fantastic social media presence. The She Will Sell It tag is amazing. One of the best follows. So go give her a follow there. And now let's get into the presentation. We're talking October, November. We're talking investment properties, primary residence, and some market data. What else do we have lined up here?
Yeah, so I just want to deep dive on October and November for everyone that follows every month. There was some technical glitches last month, so I decided why not do 2 in 1. Yep. And then we can really see, I think it's great with this kind of different market of on the decline with rates, and we can really look at, is it really sloping? Is it staying stagnant? What is happening? So I think this one will be really cool, and we can see if there is opportunity to buy.
Awesome. Well, I'm pumped to learn about the Sarnia market. Take us away.
Awesome.
Sarnia Lambton Region.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, like I do work in Sarnia, which is the main hub. So for all of you that are new to Sarnia, it's probably about 80,000 people would be in the city center. Yep. I also work with investors. You know, there are plenty of smaller communities outside, whether it be Petrolia, Corunna, Forest, Watford, which is the Lambton community. And there are definitely deals available in those communities as well, depending on kind of your strategy and what you're looking to achieve. So I would never cross those out or off your list. It's just something to be aware of. And I do serve those areas if you're interested in investing.
And I would assume that those markets, since those sub-markets are just a little bit smaller, so there's a fewer volume of deals. So the variance in the types of listings, let alone the types of deals, just a little bit more of a variance there as opposed to, you know, central Sarnia.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, where there might be 5 duplexes available in Sarnia, you know, there might be 1 in Petrolia.
Yeah.
But there's still renters there, you know, sometimes depending how far to the county you get, it can be difficult or different to get financing. So something to remember as well.
Good tip.
But it's really just comes down to where you're comfortable and kind of who you're trying to attract as a tenant too, right? Like what is your investment strategy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we're looking at kind of for October and November, I think the biggest thing is, you know, even in Canada, home sales have been down 36%. So people are, and that's not investors, that's just the general public, right? They're sitting there kind of wondering what to do. So as investor focused, I feel that these are the time where the true investors come out. You know, winter is the hardest, metaphorically and, you know, physically, but these are the times where the true investors shine if you're ready, right?
Absolutely.
The new listings are still down, but in Sarnia, I would say they're definitely up, and I'll show you that in the next graph. We definitely have a lot more than we have had. The median price for the year, this is where we're kind of most impacted in Sarnia, is about $490. It's 12% up though over last year's median in Sarnia.
So you're still up double digits median sale price compared to the same time last year.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that is pretty huge. So it shows that the demand in my mind is still there, right? Like, yes, things are sitting. I think it's an average of about 30 days right now. Okay. But although it's sitting for 30 days, we're still 12% higher than last year.
Okay.
So I think that's good considering what interest rates have jumped basically almost 5% since last year. So not bad. Demand's there.
Demand is still there. Yeah. And it seems like there are a fewer volume of newer listings and fewer sales, but I would also assume that that is really your market adjusting to the new norms. Because when you in Sarnia, you know, yeah, you're still up 12%, I think you said, from last year.
Yeah.
But from the peak of this year, you're down quite significantly. And as buyers, sellers, and investors, you know, financial situation, purchase situation, motivation changes, you're going to get a lot of really quick changes in your market. It seems like I saw the other stat there. It seems like the month over month hasn't been changing as dramatically in October and November.
Correct. Yeah. No. And I think the consensus is even across Ontario, you know, it's starting to be like, okay, the bank's going to stop soon, you know, not as big of rate increases. Like it's getting to this point where it's a tipping of, is it going to stop, you know, and when is it going to go down? So
interesting.
I guess we'll see for 2023. But yeah, like everywhere sales are down. So these were the sales in October. So since 2018, I mean, 2020 was an exceptional year for sales, like lots of people, but that was COVID, right? So
Yeah.
2019, COVID hit. Everyone wanted to move in 2020. They were not working during lockdowns in their current homes, right?
Yeah.
And now, I think even though rates are higher, if we just look at this into just a sensical way, like, okay, so many people bought and moved in 2020, it would be natural in some ways to assume that does have to come down. Like people aren't going to continue to buy and sell high every single year, right? Unless we're getting a lot more homes to purchase, which we don't have the land, to keep growing in terms of a community anyways.
Yeah. And of the listings that are selling and coming to market, I'm assuming the vast majority is resale market. It's not like you guys have had a huge influx of pre-construction coming to Sarnia, so much so that you have so many new build listings that are coming up and selling.
No. And when those were available, the land that had been there and ready to develop, that was 2020.
So it's kind of like a double whammy. Just kind of like, yes, there was a lot more new builds that were available then. Yes, more people wanted to purchase and move into a home then.
Yeah, like there was a community outside Sarnia, which a lot of people moved from Sarnia, some other areas as well, but it was about 100 sold out, in 2020.
Yeah.
And they were all built and developed. So okay. I think it does, besides, the demand is less, it just makes sense in terms of what's happened as well over the last few years.
Absolutely.
Now, if we look at 2020, we're seeing about the same thing. November, if we look at comparatively, is a slower month than October because it's getting closer to Christmas in terms of sales as well. So you look, it is a more similar year, I guess, to that 2018, 2019, kind of getting back to a more balanced market. The multiple offers in the Sarnia area, I mean, they started coming in like end of 2017, 2018 time. So
okay,
we started to see it then, but I know in Toronto and other areas, it was definitely already prior to that.
Okay. And so just on the multiple offer note, are you still seeing that being common for listings in your market? Or is that like, I know the obvious answer is, well, it depends on the listing. It's case by case basis, but if you could put like a number on it, what, 10% of listings, 20% of listings, 30% of listings are getting multiple offers or less?
I'd say less. So now, they go up. It's not, I know it's still happening in some markets, but unless someone's really underpricing it, it's not happening, right? And then I've seen where people believe they're underpricing it, and then there's still not multiple offers, right? So I think it is a harder conversation, especially with clients that are like, I want to move. What could I get for my house? It's like, I really don't know. Like I can give you an idea, but it's harder to price it than it was, a year ago because there's less sales. The interest rate, like let's look back 90 days, how you usually pull a comp report, but the interest rates have rose twice since then. Or 3 times, right? So it is really hard. It's like, okay, so this is a comparable to your home, but interest rate has hit twice. So
yeah. So you know
it's
what?
A lot more complex.
Let's pause this for a second. Let's unpack that for 2 seconds for people who are either making their arrangements or they're currently ready to rock and roll. They're thinking, hey, we're going to get all our crap together during the holidays. New Year hits. We're looking at making a move happen. If you're sitting down with a buyer and you're sitting down with your seller, a big question you must get is, okay, well, what can I get for my price range? Or what do I expect to happen in my price range? Take me through the process of how you are educating them on what to realistically expect.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you pull up your comparables, 90 days, whatever it might be. You start with showing them 30 days comparables because that'll be the closest to what you can get. Yeah. Then usually the client will say, well, my neighbor or this house sold 90 days ago and this is what they got. So why can't I get that? So it's going into, well, interest rates. Well, it would have been great if you sold 6 months ago, like you definitely could have got that, but the times have changed. So in a very respectful way, as all of us realtors, should do and will do, really just showing how the interest rates impact it. And then it's not to be fearful, but just as we can't predict when rates are going to go down, it's going to be like, this is what we think we can get for your house today. But if it's 2 months from now or 3 months from now, it could be very different depending if rates go up again.
Absolutely. I think that just communication, using that timely data and relying on the data that is the most accurate, regardless of how your opinion is on the matter, data doesn't lie. And I think that's really important when you're advising clients. That sounds like spot on.
Yeah. And like everywhere, you're seeing more conditionals. So I think it's more like, okay, you need a conditional offer. If you need X amount for your house, we cannot go in, cash or assume that your house is going to sell in a timely manner.
So especially if you're doing a buy and a sell, or if they're purchasing an investment property and they need to, inspection, they need to get financing, they need to make sure it appraises, whatever. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah. Now months of inventory, this is where I'm saying, like, we still obviously have lots of inventory.
Woo! Look at 2022, baby, we're over 2 months.
Yeah. And in terms of even like the multifamilies that, I work with a lot with my investors, we've seen more of that than we have in a long time.
Crazy.
So I think I looked the other day and we might have had 8 or 9 just sitting on there, like active, not even conditionally sold, that you could look at. Now there's reasons they still sit from an investment standpoint, right? Like whether the rent's below or whatever it might be. There are reasons, but I mean, there are places to look at least where you're not trying to guess how much higher you have to bid, right?
Yeah. Interesting. So would you say anywhere from like 10 to 15 multi-unit listings on the market in Sarnia is that's like a healthy amount of inventory compared to what you've seen for the last 5 years, probably?
Yeah, like I definitely say that's healthy, especially because there isn't, a huge amount of duplexes, triplexes, it's a smaller area, right? Yep. So a lot of people, and I'd say maybe more people are listing as well. What I'm seeing is if you bought duplexes or triplexes, let's say even prior to 2010. So people that used to just buy them, maybe wouldn't call themselves investors, but like they just had something as one investment, or they had 2 in Sarnia because they lived locally. That's all they wanted. Yeah. They paid a lot less for them. So now they are trying to sell them, to get out. Why I believe they're sitting is because the rents are lower because they've also had long-term tenants. Mm-hmm. So they want the higher price they could get if it was vacant, but they can't get it vacant.
So if you're not relying on the price and the rents, what type of factors or variables are you looking at for your investors, like right off the bat, to be like, there is value here, or you know what, there's no value in this property?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's just looking for a home that hasn't been hacked up, like looking for something that appears to be good. Because oftentimes the duplexes or triplexes, they're older homes, right? Yep. And unless an investor is ready to jump into a lot of work, which they might be, but often if you're coming from out of town and you have to pay a general contractor, things like that, you probably aren't. So looking for, the bones and the structure of it to be pretty solid, and just gauging, depending on the investor that is interested, or I'm thinking about, that the work matches the home, basically, what they can do. Mm-hmm. After that, I mean, it's looking at exit strategies of the tenants. So, like, are they okay to hold on to a tenant for a year? Are they okay to pay out a tenant? Like, in legal ways, are they going to move into a unit themselves? What kind of could we do to increase value in a legal way for them? Yeah. Right.
And clearly this is something that obviously you have experienced firsthand, probably even before you got your real estate license. And now you can just be like, well, I've done this strategy, this strategy, this strategy based on my experience with this type of investment property and this scenario. Start with strategy A, and if that doesn't work, backup strategy B, because you've executed on this personally, it seems like.
And I think that's always my first conversation with any investor that calls me is, what's your plan B and C? Because I had a lot in COVID where they call me and they're like, oh, I'm going to burn, like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, but what if that doesn't work?
It's a fair question.
Like, I don't know. That's what I'm going to do. That's what my coach told me to do. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm like, yeah, but what if you can't get that rent you think you can get? Or what if, like, and I think that's the biggest thing, that people just sometimes think that their plan is going to work. But you need, as an investor, we can't just guess. That's speculating. We need to know our exit strategies.
I think that is fantastic advice. Awesome.
Now, November. So if you look at it, basically the same. I mean, we
Yeah.
have more inventory though. So we go from just under 3 to 3.5 months of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, if we look back, it is normal for all the months to go up a bit, like even 2021, busy year. I mean, besides 2021, the rest did increase. So November is generally a slower month, which I can attest to that. Last November and December were crazy, where people just kept coming to buy.
That's actually true. Basically, November to January was like unseasonably crazy last year.
Unseasonally busier than summer, some of my craziest months, and prices just kept driving higher and higher to the point you're like, how high can that terrible area go? You know, you're just like, no, that's not true what that house sold for. Like, and it just kept going up.
Yeah, I'm sure the locals who have been homeowners for a generation or two in Sarnia have, you know, had very similar opinions to a lot of the old school locals for even my market here in Waterloo Region, right? They just couldn't, unfathomable for how quickly prices kind of jumped up and continued against what people's expectations were. But it seems like you're heading into December with a little bit more inventory than expected, but do you expect that trend to continue in December or January, or are you thinking people are going to start just pulling listings and putting them back up in the market in the new year?
At this point, you know, like just based on my own phone, and you know the calls I'm getting, which is pretty slow at this point compared to, you know, last year or usual. It is slower. Will they be pulled? I'm not sure. I guess it depends the need to sell, right? January, I mean, I feel like it's harder too, because like even though it's still COVID, you know, people are getting out there, they're going away. Like there is a lot more going on that people aren't like just home shopping every day like they did during COVID, right? Like people are doing different things. So I expect this to continue at least for another month or two in terms of increased until we see that Bank of Canada say we're not raising it this month.
Yeah. So our buyer, seller, and investor strategies for the next 30, maybe even 60 days, depending on what the Bank of Canada is going to do, should be fairly consistent. We're not, you know, raising the alarm, or we're not changing up our strategies right away.
And no, and I don't think so. And that's why, you know, when you're doing cap rates, you know, like how they used to do them, they're like, oh, just, you know, 4 or 5%. It's like, no, you need to factor in a cushion now, you know, when you're doing deals, which I think you should have done before too. But some people, you know, depending on your level of risk, weren't. And at this point, they're probably losing money.
Yeah.
Especially if they took a variable rate and could not add value to the property.
Yeah. What I just heard was some money advice. It's coming. It's coming.
There we go.
Ah! A margin of safety. Please, investors, listen. A margin of safety during periods of uncertainty. That is
even
the
in
best
good times.
advice. That is the best
even
advice.
in good times. Yeah, margin of safety. And to have that, have more than one exit. That gives you your margin of safety.
Even I don't have a second money gun though. That's good advice too. Awesome. So what do we got going on now? We got residential market activity.
So this is really simple. We talked about a lot of this, so I'll skip through a lot of this. But, you know, like we just have a lot of active listings, you know, and this is not just Sarnia, but, you know, the community where if you looked in 2021, like look at that. Like we go from, this was October, but we go from about 125 to about 375.
Okay. Yeah.
So just a wild amount of more inventory, similar 125 to basically the same. We actually, you know, less inventory now, but about 350.
Yep.
And the consensus I'm hearing, even in the locals and in the investors, you know, everyone talks about it. Oh, it should be better in the spring.
What does that mean?
Like, I don't know, because I asked, you know, someone that even looking to sell their duplex, they're like, oh, I know someone at the bank, and they say, you know, it's going to be, prices will be more in the spring. And I'm like, I wish I had people that knew this. Like, I don't even think the Bank of Canada knows this.
Yeah, sick. Like, how do you know that? And what does better in the spring really mean? What that tells to me is when I hear those comments, that means that it's not, whatever it is, it means it's not perfect for you right now. Or you just don't know what perfect means to you.
You took, I think it's also an element of not fear, but it's like, oh, it's kind of like when you're a realtor and you tell a person a price and it's less than the other realtor said, so they chose the other realtor, even though we don't buy the house. I think it's that, it just sounds better. So let's stick to that advice and just avoid reality.
The power of the human mind.
Yeah, I think so, So we'll see what springs bring, but that's why, I said I can't make predictions for 2023. I can predict it based on what we're seeing. I can predict that it seems like the next few months are going to be the same until the Bank of Canada tells us.
I think that's a pretty fair prediction too.
But other than that, I don't know, up or down, we'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, sweet. Oh, this is by market segment too?
Yeah, so this is
perfect.
kind of how I do it. This is most of Sarnia. Again, I like to refresh everyone. If you are new, I exclude Point Edward, although there are probably, like there's deals there. But Point Edward's a nice community people want to live in, but there's not as many multis at all. It's just not an area that investors flock to.
Okay.
And prices are a bit higher, so I just exclude that out because it doesn't really make sense to include.
Okay, so kind of a separate little pocket specifically for like owner occupied.
Yeah, there's some businesses. It's near the water, like there's the Blue Water Bridge is technically there, casino, so there's definitely some things there, but it's not as much an investor or rental area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is that the bridge where people like float down the canal?
Correct. Yeah.
If you guys haven't done that, shout out Sarnia. Beautiful opening. Like you don't really expect it because there's like that little parking lot and then the pier area you can walk around.
Yes.
But like crystal clear, beautiful water that you can just like hop in and like the current will just like take you down. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. No, that's the area. So that's why often you'll hear Sarnia is the blue coast, like great beaches, great area to live, and yeah, really nice. So
very cool.
It's an extra great place to invest, especially if there's like a granny suite that can be yours, right?
Talk to us. Well, so we got South, Sherwood, Central, North End. For the newer viewers or listeners, give us the quick and dirty about what each of these four quadrants is kind of like, because I'd love to learn myself too. This is very cool.
Yeah, so South End, you would get on there if you kept going down, basically. That would take you to like the chemical plants, so It's a more industrial end. If you talk to anyone who bought a house, 30, 40 years ago, this was like the lower end, whereas if, like lower end Sarnia.
Okay.
So this would be like the bad area, even though it's not bad compared to any city. It
sounds like downtown bad. Kitchener.
But it's not bad. It's just the houses need some restoration. Like this during COVID was like investor's dream. This is where they went to because it was cheaper. There was definitely work you could put into the homes. There's definitely those R2s, R3s, big homes, like those big homes you could add more units to. This is where they were looking.
Very cool.
So the prices of the South End shot up huge. And this is where you saw the most of, there are some bad streets, where people are like, how did that house sell for that? So that was that area.
Because they were probably working with a realtor from another market or without any experience. That's how the property sold for that price.
Yes, that definitely happens too. But this, there's still opportunities there. I still would consider it safe. Again, work with a local realtor, work with me, work with who knows the area still and knows the rents. Because I also found, like out of town especially, would go and be like, oh, you could rent that for this much. And it's like, do you know that house or that street? Like the type of people you're going to attract are not the people you want.
And into these smaller markets that are a little bit more fragmented like yours, those make such a big difference. Like I have a segment of our market that's very much like that as well. And it's like you could have a block of some of the nicest homes in this entire neighborhood, beautiful family homes, well taken care of, and literally 2 blocks over, you're gonna have a methadone clinic. Like I'm not saying that either of those things are good and bad, but I'm saying if you want to make an educated decision as a homeowner or as an investor, those things are going to make a difference. And like not just in tens of thousands of return, but also in the management, the type of tenants that you're going to want to have, attract, and keep. So I think that's good advice. And this is why I think it's just really important to reiterate these things for the newer viewers, because like it's so important to understand the different market segments. If you guys are looking in Sarnia, you're actively doing research to figure out if this is a market for you, this is important.
Correct. Yeah, and you're exactly right. So nothing against that market, but work with someone when you're in it, and there's great returns that you can have in that market still.
Absolutely.
Sherwood right beside. It has a lot of townhouses, like condo styles in terms of townhouse, not like on top condos.
Yep.
It has a lot of split levels, single family homes. They are in a good price point. They did also go insane, obviously, like everywhere during COVID. But it is a great area if you want to do rentals because they are in good school districts that people like. Also, it's right close to the college, which is on the other side of that 40 highway there. So it's a big student rental area.
Okay. And that's a significant price jump. Like you're 100K higher, right? Like that's a big difference.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say, because we can look in the next one too, like, because I'm segmenting them into smaller markets and there's a lot less sales going on, we have to be careful with these as well.
Thank you.
It'd be interesting what I might do if I next month, like, so when we look at December, is I might just put, instead of doing month over month, year over year, to actually look at, okay, the rates are 5% different, but what are the prices out of all the sales for the year?
Mm-hmm. And like, I know most people watching know this, but take these stats as, you know, at face value. There is a lot of context to properly understand what these really mean. If you are brand new to investing in real estate, brand new to Sarnia, this is really good baseline information to have. But like, shoot Sarah or her team a quick message with your specific questions, because we get questions about market rents, prices, list to sale price ratios, cost per door, and like market to market, segment to segment, even month to month, especially when you're in a market that doesn't have hundreds and hundreds of transactions in each segment every month, the data can be a little skewed. So I think that's awesome. And honestly, just like the little tidbits about like, well, that's got the good school district and some newer, more modern style, like townhouse condo units, like those are going to sell a little bit more expensive, but they're going to be in the areas where the types of people want to live and actually pay good rent for those types of homes.
Yeah. And I mean, Sherwood's the area where during COVID, maybe buying a townhouse didn't make sense, you know, like to rent out. But now as prices go below 300 again, and the condo fees are maybe only $100 a month, and that includes if the roof goes bad or, you know, like silly little things, maybe that's a great investment now. So this is an area that I think still should be looked at.
Very cool.
Central, I just kind of group all in together. There is some areas that are more, you know, like you wouldn't invest there probably. They're like nice single family homes. You get the downtown, which is lower, but overall kind of the center would have some single family homes and some R2s, R3s. It is a good area to invest in. It got a little pricey for investors during the whole COVID thing, but it is down to a level and a negotiation style where it definitely is something to look at. And then North End, this is the area that, you know, if you're a local, everyone wants to live in. The best school districts, you're near the water, you're near the mansions, you know, depending where you are. But this is kind of, as families come in, especially from out of town too, they just often know that this is the end of town they want to be in. So.
Okay. But it also see like down 14%. Talk to me about that.
I think too, I mean, that's something where it's the bigger houses aren't selling.
Like they're not selling or they're not coming to market.
They're not selling. So if someone starts with a house that's up for 1.5 million, but it's sitting there because no one wants to buy that right now.
Okay.
But maybe like closer to the 402, but in the North End, there's a home, you know, that's selling for the 460 range. Just more of those are selling.
Okay.
And that's where I do think I need to do the year over year next year to kind of get, or next month to really look at what is a year looking like. So this was October. But then this is where I'm saying in our market, because it's a smaller market, these numbers are still relative, right?
Okay.
Like, because now North End, probably a higher price homes were selling.
Makes sense.
So I think these numbers are probably in some ways more accurate for this month minus the North End, because everything is coming down just like interest rates, right? So even this one, I mean, there's negatives here. But it is expected that the North End is going to fall harder because the numbers are bigger, kind of like the cities, right? If 1% gets added to a mortgage, or it's going to increase by a lot more for the higher priced homes.
Yeah, I think that's just good for context, especially if your clients or any viewers out there are looking at larger multi-units in the higher price points. Just consider that the numbers may be skewed. There's less volume, or because they're a lot larger nominal value, the percentages will look a little different. I think it's just really important to look at the real data. And once you know your type of, like, the profile for the type of property, look at the actives, look at the recently solds.
Yeah, we can dive in way further if you know what you want.
Yeah,
right?
for the purpose of this, this is a really good breakdown for somebody like myself who knows very little about the Sarnia area and real estate market.
But I definitely would say, like, yeah, the average in South right now, if you looked it up, of what's selling, is definitely around 275. You're expecting to spell.
Okay.
Like that would be average for a house. Sherwood, yeah, you definitely can buy something for 440 between the nicest house and a townhouse. Yeah, that's probably the middle. Central 379, they've definitely had a huge hit. I'd agree. It says it's similar to last year, but that is a very common price I'm seeing in the middle, right?
Okay.
Like, and North End, yeah, 545. Like, there's lots of homes up for that price, and there's, like, you would still not see as many homes under the 500,000 point in the North End.
Okay, so if you're going North End, guys, sounds like we're around the 500 and up, right?
Yeah, unless you're finding, like, hey, you find a great bird down that way, you find something that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, though, with that is how many exit strategies do you have? Because if you buy it, you put all this money, you find things, like, and it's still not worth what you have into it, like, we still need to make sure it's a really good price.
Yeah, that makes sense. Margin of safety, the money advice, it still applies.
Still applies. Now, to wrap up, like we said, kind of, now can be the time. Others are scared, we kind of know, or we're going to assume that rates are going to keep going up. So it's always nicer than, just thinking they're going to go down and they go up. It can only get better, we hope. There definitely are properties out there. There's, for example, a duplex on Lochiel Street. It was still available when I looked yesterday, around the 249 point. So I just wanted to put this one out there.
Okay, and stop before we go to the next one. Duplex, Lochiel Street duplex for 249. What do you know offhand what type of rents they're currently getting?
I don't, but I just wanted to put this one out here because it's like, this is where, what other markets can you even start at that point for a duplex?
Not in mine.
No. So yes, rents could be bad. Yes, maybe it could need some work, but is it worth at least looking or diving more into?
Yeah.
To know more.
So on that note, if maybe not this one, but if you have a 7 out of 10 duplex in a B plus or better neighborhood in Sarnia, what type of rents total are you probably getting for that type of property?
I would say like an upstairs 2-bedroom unit. I was just in one that someone wants to sell, but only if I bring them a buyer. And it's a nice house. It has a 2-bedroom upstairs, 2-bedroom on the main floor. And both of them probably could rent out for around $1,700 to $1,800 a month, all inclusive.
Fantastic. So you're getting anywhere from like $32,000 to $38,000 a month total.
Yeah, so when I calculated it out with her expenses on that property, if you spend $415 on that home and got like the $1,800 rent, I believe it was close to a 7.5 cap rate. So it was still like really good, and that wasn't even in like an A plus neighborhood. But amazing. That's and the tenant was paying that. Like I met the tenants, like that's kind of, but when it was going to be accepted, so that it is going to be vacant come January. So then you can set the rent for what you want.
Dang, okay.
So they're still there. So that's one, like again, reach out to me if you're serious. But she's like, I'll sell it if I get what I want. If not, I'll keep it and re-rent it, So the deals are out there. Or go big with Walnut. 1.5 million reduced 1.55. They reduced it 200,000.
Ooh, nice little price drop. I smell motivation, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. The financials I've looked over, I mean, they make sense some months, but not others. So there's still issues. But again, depending on the investor and the strategy you have, or it's not my representation, so I don't know. But depending on the seller's motivation, we never know, right? It's something
Yep.
to look into.
And it seems
But
to me like since you do have a little bit more inventory than you typically do this time of year, and there's also a fair amount of properties that aren't selling like necessarily quicker than a month, that this may actually be a time where you could negotiate either favorable terms or bake in an initial margin of safety, or at least try, because you know you have an eightplex that's dropping 200K. You
I
have
say, you see that? Do you think they're motivated to sell? Right? Like, do you think maybe?
right, and it's just like until you take that stab, or until you actually understand or even put an offer on paper that makes sense for you, you really don't know. So it's a lot of for investors that are reaching out to you, or your clients that want to buy primary or sell primary residence, like your philosophy is very clear. It's okay, what is your situation and goals? What is our market, and what is everything else you need to know in between, so that you know what the heck you're doing. So I think that's fantastic. I'm going to bug you for the walnut listing after this, just because I'm really curious, because there's not,
Yeah, I'll
eighplexes
send
are
it.
just super rare too. You know what I mean? Like those aren't very common properties anywhere. So even to have that on the market, worth a look. Same with this duplex at the 249, kind of a juicy price point for a lot of the viewers out there that are looking at lots of different markets in Ontario. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's more. The rents might not make sense, but maybe it comes to the end of the year. And like we said, put something on paper. Maybe, we see the seller paid a lot less. Maybe they do want to sell. They just need something to tempt them. Like, we don't know unless we try. I'm just a firm believer in being conservative and having your end figured out before we start playing at the game.
Yeah. Get yourself prepared, conservative margin of safety, multiple exit strategies. Jesus, Sarah, have you been investing in real estate or not? Right. And I mean, are there any other deals that you want to share with the viewers before we go ahead?
I think that's it. But if anyone's looking for a duplex, that's not on market currently, but is very serious about it. It's not one that is just like, oh, maybe. But if you are serious, probably in the 415 range, with again the conservative cap, reach out to me.
Listen to this.
But
A real investment realtor, ladies and gentlemen, has a little bit of inventory from clients in the back pocket off market. That is awesome. I love that. And I want to ask you one question before we sign off. You're an investor yourself. It seems like you are very comfortable putting yourself in other people's shoes to try and help them make a decision that's best for them, but especially kind of like long-term margin of safety and multiple kind of exit strategies. So I just want to ask you this. Is real estate in Sarnia in 5 years going to be more valuable or less valuable than it is today?
more valuable, because one, I'm hoping that rates go down and we can refinance and you get an even better deal. Just like what happened, let's say the 90s, when everyone's like, oh, people paid so cheap for their properties. Well, interest rates were 13%. So as the market dropped and they got 500,000, last year, it was more valuable.
So if prices are likely to be higher in 5 years than they are now, might be the best possible time to reach out to our friend and yours, Sarah Arseneault, down in Sarnia, to take a peek at what your options are. You can follow her at She Will Sell It on Instagram. I'm so thankful that you actually got your Instagram account back up and running. I know we follow it on the Phipps Brittain account and my personal one. If you guys want to leave a comment here on the YouTube video, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about Sarnia, Sarah, and the real estate channel. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Canadian Real Estate channel, we would appreciate that as well. Again, my name is Zach with the Phipps Brittain Real Estate team. This is Sarah. She Will Sell It Arseneault. Thank you so much for checking out the video.